Hey, welcome back to the channel. Got a little something on the bench for you here. So we got the Radiomaster Zorro. This is an amazing radio. I've had such a good time flying this thing from 7 inches all the way down the whoops. Just a great radio. I have a playlist on the channel if you want to check out more content about it. And then as time progresses and I do more with the radio, I'll just kind of add to that playlist. So keep checking that out if you're a Zorro owner. I'm assuming you are because you're here for this video. You're either brand new, you just got a brand new radio, you have a brand new quadcopter, you got a new Elrs module to slap on the back, and you're having some issues getting it working, or you just want to study up before you get it. That's what this video is for, because I'm super excited because of this video. This video has helped so many people, just going through the process of every step that you need to take to kind of get everything to work correctly. The cool thing is that we're going to go ahead and update all this. So we have a new radio, we have a new module, we have a brand new build quadcopter or a bind and fly if you purchased a bind and fly. We need to get this stuff to work correctly. So we're going to go through all that. This is going to be quite a filming and editing because we're going to go into Betaflight. There's going to be a lot to go through. But I'm super excited about this, so let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is just go ahead and get our external module. So this is the Happymodel ES24TX Slim Pro. We're going to go ahead and get this mounted onto the back of the radio. There's a couple things that people have had issues with. I think I can address that real quick. I have an unboxing of this module on the channel already. So if you're interested to go ahead and check that out. One thing I want to mention, you do want to make sure that you have this antenna. There is some information on Expresslrs saying that this is kind of the preferred antenna. Some of these modules were coming with the rubber ducky, so if you've purchased it used or a store has old stock and you get the little, just a dipole antenna, they're actually recommending this one. So you can buy just this antenna like on race day quads or something. So on the back of our radio here, we'll go ahead and align this. Now the one thing is these are plastic, these 4 little tabs, and you don't want to, this metal sharp enough to shave those clean off of there. You can see get the lighting for you, sorry. So these 4 little tabs, you want to make sure that you don't break them or scrape them off or cut them off with the metal casing of this. So you're going to just kind of drop it straight down on those 2 right there. Let me see if I can get my lighting correct here. How's that? I had to kind of blow it all out, but you see here, it's just barely holding on there. It's ready. Now what we need to do is we need to apply a decent amount of pressure downward. So push down on that module, okay? As you put your thumb here on, and just slide that back, okay? If you don't put downward pressure on that, it'll shave those pins off and it won't align the pins going into the back of the radio. I've actually seen quite a few people destroy that and they're not very happy about it. So there's a little tidbit advice. Because this is a transmitter, we want to make sure our antenna is attached. You don't want to power this module up without having the antenna on there. It will tend to burn it up. So just get that on there nice and flat. Now, let me fix my lighting again. So we have our module on there. This radio has an internal 4-in-1 module. So if yours has an internal ELRS module, things will be quite a bit different throughout this video. But the external module will not power up until we create a model that initiates the external module. So that's one thing that we'll have to do. We have a lot more stuff to do with the radio, so let's go ahead and just push this off to the side here. The quadcopter is a fresh build quadcopter. If you have a bind and fly, that's fine, as long as it has a built-in ELRS receiver. Everything should work out fine. If you have an external receiver, I'm probably going to do a video on an external receiver, but in this video we're going to be dealing with the internal SPI receiver. So I have 702 23,000 kV motors. This is a Beta FPV Meteor 65 frame. I like this frame because it doesn't have a lot of bounce back, so when you bump into things, it doesn't rubber band you. Like the original Mobula 6 frame is like a rubber band. You hit something and you could be 6 feet away. The flight controller is a Superbee. This is an interesting thing, and that's kind of what's prompted the video. This Superbee has the ICM 42688P gyro in it. This Superbee has not flown very well, and tuning has been kind of a struggle. And in 4.4 Betaflight, there's some changes, some code differences that we're going to take advantage of. So we're going to bump this up to 4.4 Betaflight. Underneath here, I have a Happymodel OVX 300 VTX, and then wrapping around is a mini lollipop pinch camera with a pound mount. So we're all ready to go. Now, the one thing I would advise, if you haven't already plugged in the quadcopter, or if yours is on the way, you might want to do a continuity check on it. I do have in my video file quick tips if you want to go to the playlist, and it says right there how to do a continuity check. And you can do a continuity check to make sure that there's no shorts, and you can check all your motor poles and everything to make sure that it's going to be good to go to plug into your computer. Because the last thing you want to do is plug this into the computer if it's shorted out. So we're going to get the Betaflight here in a second. With the radio, we need these two components. So our radio and our external module, we need them to communicate with each other. To get that to happen, we need to use Lewis script. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and power up our radio. Just to let you know, if you're not following along in the channel, in the playlist I show an amp rating on this radio, what it's like to have this module, how power hungry is this module, that kind of sort of thing. I don't run the internal batteries. I actually run an external. I got it off to the side here. I've run a 5200 pack. This 5200 pack is running my goggles, it's running my radio, my rapid fire, the DVR, like all the things. And it's really sweet to just have one battery. You just charge it up and go. Instead of dealing with all those different sizes and different batteries. So anyway, I have a FR Sky 5-incher on this. Like I said, this is 401 module internal. So what we need to do is we need to go to our models, and we're just going to bump up here, and we're going to create a model. You know, let me go ahead and zoom in for you so you can see that screen nice and neat. All right, so we're zoomed in there. You can see now. So we clicked on model. We're going to go ahead and enter. So now it says model number 8. We're going to go ahead and page right here. We're going to page into that model. And then model name, I don't know, whatever you want to name it. Just go ahead and name it whatever. For this tutorial, just to make this short, because I don't want to like go through a whole bunch of stuff, we're just going to call it E. All right, we'll call it E. And then we'll go ahead and return out. And then I want to scroll that way. Okay. So right now you have two choices to make. If your internal module is ELRS, you're going to enable the internal module. Okay. Oops. Let me turn on there. Little roller's just a little sensitive, isn't it? So in my case, I have a multi-module in mind. If you think that you have, I've seen this happen. There's quite a bit of people having issues with this. They were sent the multi-module. Okay. Because it says multi. But there's also something that you need to do in hardware to make sure that that is correct. They may have set it up with multi, but it's actually ELRS inside. And I'm going to show you real quick, if you're one of those people, I'm going to show you real quick what to do. So let's go ahead and turn that back off. We're going to return out of this module, and go into systems. And we're going to page over to hardware. I'm going to come over here and we're going to scroll up. Oh, did I pass it already? Yeah, right here. So internal RF type, multi. If you have the ELRS internal module and they have this on multi for whatever reason, you can change it. Just go in here and change it to crossfire. That's all you need to do. And then your internal ELRS module will work correctly. So we don't want to do that for me because I actually do have the multi-module. So let's return out of that. All right. So when we're in the model, let me page over, go back up to where we were. If you go into your module after doing that, it will give you a crossfire option. See, I don't have anything but multi, because that's correct. But now you'll be able to use crossfire protocol for your internal ELRS module. Does that make sense to you? So for this model, we want to turn on the external module. So let's go ahead and turn that on. And we're going to go to crossfire, because that's the protocol that they're using. And then we'll go ahead and I'm going to change this receiver number to number 8, because that's the model number. So I'll have all my receivers in a catalog 1 through 8. Go ahead and return out of that. Now, one thing we want to do before we go any further is we want to go to Systems, and we want to go ahead and page back over to Hardware. And we want to scroll up right here, ADC filters. You see how that box is empty? You do not want that box enabled, so that would be enabled. We want to make sure that's disabled, and that's for the whole radio, for everything that we do. Anything you do with Expresslrs, you want that off. You don't want the ADC filtration working alongside with your Betaflight filters and everything else. So go ahead and return, and it would be a good time right now to do a calibration, so you can go in and calibrate your radio. Click on that and follow the instructions for your gimbals to make sure that they're at their furthest points. And when you're dealing with a quadcopter, you don't want to mess with your trims. Okay, so you want to make sure they're all centered. Trim center. Trim center. Okay, you don't want to mess with these 4 trims, because you actually cut away from your stick movements. And we don't want to do that with quadcopters. With quadcopters, we want to have a 1000 to 2000. So we'll deal with that here in a second. It's in the outputs. I'm trying to throw too much information as fast as I can, but I just want to make sure we're covering all our bases. So right now, we know that we have our external module connected to the radio correctly. We have the external module ready for power, and our ADC filters turned off. You can go into Systems and you can page over to radio setup and turn down your beeper and do all kinds of things in here, set up your date. But one thing you also want to look at is your battery range. If you're using the internal Li-ion batteries, you can take those down to 6.6 up to 8.4, and that'll give you your battery range. I'm using a LiPo. But I don't really care, because I know that I charge my LiPo every time I fly. And this radio is set up for 2S, so you don't want to plug a 4S LiPo into this thing. The external cable here, I go through that in that amp rating video, so if you're interested in knowing more about powering it externally, that video is available. So let's go ahead and page out. There's all kinds of things you can change and modify about your radio. You can kind of play around with that if you want. All right, so the next step that we need to do is we need to have our radio and our external module communicating with each other. So that takes Lewis script. We want to make sure that we have the correct Lewis script. So like I said, we're going to download 3.0 ELRS. 3.0 ELRS also has in the configurator a Lewis script for our radio. So what we want to do is go ahead and connect our radio. I'm going to actually turn this model, because I already have everything set up. Oops, let me return back out of there. Let me page over. I'm just going to turn that external module off right now while I'm doing this, because I don't want my module on the back here powered up. So I'm going to return. It's okay. Let me grab a cord. I'm going to go ahead and plug the radio in. The radio plug down here, the Type-C USB, if I could turn the, see right there, the Type-C. That's for charging your internal batteries. You're going to want to use this port on the front. So right here you have your Type-C connector. And we'll plug in here so we can download our Lewis script to this mass storage. Or you can take this SD card out, which that's what I'm going to do, because I don't have a cable long enough. So I'm going to I turn my radio off, and we'll pull my SD card out if I can. That is not easy to come out. All right, so we have our SD card. We're going to go ahead and throw it into an adapter and chuck it in the computer. So let's go ahead and jump over to the computer real quick. All right, so we have our SD card plugged in, and we're just looking at some of these files here. So we're going to scripts, because we're working with our Lua scripts. So we'll go ahead and enter in here, and then tools. So our Lua scripts are in here. You can see that the Radiomaster Zorro comes with quite a array of Lua script. And what we want to do is we want to build a Lua script. So you can see already that I have V2. I'm actually using V2.5, I think it is. So we need to update our Lua script to 3.0. So what we need to do is go to Elrs configurator to make that happen. So in here we just type in Expresslrs and Google search it, so expresslrs.org, and this is where we want to go to get that configurator. So if we go to quick start here, you're going to have some information pop up, and it's going to say you want to have your Elrs configurator. 3.2 is out now. Check it out on GitHub. So you're going to go into GitHub and get that information. So in here in GitHub, I have a Windows computer. You really want to read some of these things, go through all this, and check out some of these other features. Quite a bit of information packed into here. But basically, you're going to go into the configurator and get the source information. Okay. Download that file and then open up your configurator. So now we're in the configurator. We have it open. The newest version that I have is V155 at the time of filming this, and as you can see, I'm using 2.51. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and get the latest version. So this release is 3.20. And then we want to choose our target. So in our case, we have the Happymodel TX. Okay, so you can see here this is 2.4 and 900. We have the 2.4. Okay, so this is going to be all of Happymodel's, basically all their transmitters, all their receivers, everything will be under this category. So if you have, like, let's say you have Beta FPV, you're going to choose that one. If you have the Radiomaster, what is it, the Radiomaster Ranger, I think it is, you'll go to Radiomaster's category. But in our case, we're dealing with Happymodel, and it's 2.4 module. I'm not running the 900 hertz system. So we're going to choose that. Now that's going to allow us to have all the devices that are out and available. So we have our EP2400 RX, so this would be like the EP series, the EP1 dual out. Those are different types of receiver systems. And then here is the standard TX module, and we have the Pro. So we have the ES24TX Pro series. TX means transmitter, and RX means receiver. So we're not going to deal with these because we do not have an external receiver to deal with. If you have like an external receiver like an EP1, I actually have another video already out. I'm using a different radio, but I go through all of this. So we're going to go ahead and choose the TX module, and as you can see here, it automatically pops up the correct Lua script. Now I'm going to go ahead and set the rest of this stuff up. So I want to choose Wi-Fi, because everything I'm going to do, I'm going to go through Wi-Fi and do it. For me, it was really simple. Standard mode, and then regulatory. So you have the EU and the rest of the world, basically. So we have that chosen. Bind phrase, I have my bind phrase in here, so you can customize it. This is like super handy. So if you do download a different receiver, like the EP1, when you basically are in here setting up for the EP1, the bind phrase is great because when you plug in your radio and power it on, you plug in your quadcopter and power it on, it automatically binds up. It sees the module, it sees the radio RX on your quadcopter. They see each other, they got the correct binding phrase, they made up, it's done. The binding is over. No finding buttons, thankfully. Once you kind of get through this stuff, it's like, it's really not too bad. But to kind of stumble through it on your own, or I don't know, spend 3 weeks reading the website and going through everything to try to understand it all, it is kind of cumbersome. But right now, that's kind of where you don't really want to mess with any of this. You don't really want to mess with pre-releases. That's for testing, people that are working with the devs and everything. So this is kind of just standard stuff. Extra data. So we have, like default value here, the network. We have, this is kind of interesting because your receiver will, I want it to go in 60 seconds into Wi-Fi mode. So if I don't have my radio turned on, it'll take 60 seconds for the Wi-Fi to enable on my receiver. This value is smaller by default. I wanted to make sure it was long enough to where if I forgot my radio, my receiver didn't go into Wi-Fi mode on me. And then, of course, my home Wi-Fi information so that you're able to connect to the Wi-Fi to download the information. But for this, we're just dealing with the Lewis script. So we'll go ahead and click on that and download the file and put it in a folder. And then you're going to come back here and you're going to actually build this file. Okay, so don't forget your Wi-Fi password. So when you go find the Wi-Fi link, you know how to do that, I imagine. You go to Wi-Fi and then search when you have your module turned on, and we'll get into that in a second. But just go ahead and click build. Don't build in Flash, just build, and that file will automatically open on your desktop, and you can put that into the same file as your Lewis script. I hope that makes sense. We're going to get to more information, so don't worry, I'll kind of explain a little bit further, but we're just creating folders, just simply creating folders. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that folder. Alright, so we're in this folder. So I saved my Lewis script right here. So this is my Lewis script file. I've saved my EP1 information. We are not going to deal with this folder. This is for me for future reference because I have EP1 receivers in a handful of quads now. I'm slowly but surely getting rid of my RXSRs and my XM Pluses and all that. So it's quite an exciting transition for me, and it's going to take some time because the hobby dollars are stretching thin here. Firmware. So these two open up. These two folders here are basically the same thing. So here's your Happymodel Pro module. So this is the Slim. The Slim and the JR base style, they both take the same firmware. So this is the firmware we'll need to update our module. Okay, for now we need this file. Alright, so we have our information here, our Lewis script. We're just going to go ahead and drag this over and drop it in. Okay, so now we have our Elrs v3 Lewis script file ready to go. And we're going to back out of here, and we're done with our tools, and we're done with our scripts. So we'll go ahead and close this folder out and jump back over to the bench. Alright, so back over here at the bench, we're going to go ahead and take our SD card here. We're going to go ahead and slide it back into place. See if I can do this while I'm trying to video it. You want to be careful to make sure that you line that up correctly so that thing doesn't fall down inside the case. It's a good tight squeeze. Unlike the TX16S, that SD card's real easy to fall down inside your case. Alright. So now we have the correct Lewis script. I'm going to grab something here to keep this. It's kind of a silly thing, this fan intake and out. It would have been nice if it was on the sides, because if you set your radio down, it actually closes off the airflow. So I'll go ahead and grab this so I can get this to tilt up. So now when we have our module turned on, it's not going to suffocate it. So go ahead and power up the radio.
Welcome to HTX.
Alright, we're going to go ahead to Systems. Let's see if I can keep this from walling around. And now we're going to find that Lewis script. So we have Expresslrs. You noticed in that folder I had a couple of them. Alright, so we have our Expresslrs. Go ahead and click on that. Loading. Alright, so this Expresslrs is loading and loading because we don't have our model turned on. Remember, we turned that off? So this is kind of an example I wanted to show. You have, like, it's just sitting there loaded. It's not doing anything. So we need to hold down the return button to come back out. And now we need to return, go to our model. Let's see if I can get this thing to sit still. I guess it ain't turned on yet. Let's just hold it that way. Page over. Go back up to our external module, and we're going to go to Crossfire, and then return. Alright, so now what we need to do is we need to just make sure we have our light is fading in and out here, so that's letting us know that it is powered up now. So let's go to Systems. Now in this Lewis script here, this is the Lewis script that was on the radio. Let's page over to the SD card and grab the Lewis script that we downloaded. So we're going to go to Scripts, go to Tools, and then we'll go to Lewis script 3. You shouldn't have to do this, but because I'm running different Lewis scripts, because I have different modules with dates and times on them, so we're going to go ahead and execute this one. So hold down on the wheel there and execute that, and then this should pop up for you. So now it's no longer, thinking or trying. Let's go ahead and go to the power. So we don't really want this thing to be powered up really high. So let's go ahead and bump it down to 25, and then we'll turn our fan on if we need to. If you put the fan threshold to 10 milliwatt, the fan will run all the time. It'll run all the time on 25. If you put it to 50, the fan won't run anymore until you change that to 50. Okay, so if you turn it to 10, I don't know if you can hear that or not. It's such a faint. This fan is quite a bit quieter than the other fan on the other module. So that way we have our fan running while this is turned on. I'm just going to hold it up here. This is kind of not working out. It's kind of teeter-tottering on that. Alright, so we have our power. So that's output power of our module. This is a really interesting thing. Elrs had a competition, and at 10 milliwatt, 25, 50, 100, and they want a DVR range of how far people have flown out and away from themselves, basically. And it's absolutely amazing. You should go on their website and check that out. It's a competition for range. I mean, the range is crazy for the low milliwatts. So anyway, before I get all geeky on that, go ahead and come out of here. Let me make sure. I just want to make sure that's. I thought my other module was going down to 10. Just want to make sure. So that one, yeah, 25. So we'll hit back here, and then we're going to go down to our Wi-Fi connectivity. So this is where you want to make sure you have, something to keep that fan from getting, plugged or stifled. So we're going to sit here and we're going to run our Wi-Fi. So as soon as I connect this, we can jump back to the computer, and we're going to look for, go down in the bottom corner of your computer and click on Wi-Fi, and then search for this module, and it should come up, and the Wi-Fi password is 100000. So let me go ahead and jump over to the computer. So I'm gonna initiate that, and I'm gonna enable Wi-Fi, and that way we can update our module. So make sure that your battery is full. Okay, you don't want to mess around with this with a about dead battery. So want to make sure you're good to go there. Let's jump over to the computer. Alright, so we're over here at the computer, and I chose, this is Expresslrs. This is everything that we need set up for the Wi-Fi password 10001. I went to the update section, okay, and then we're going to choose our file of firmware. So we're just going to go into we're going to choose our file to be able to update. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that file. So this is the one that we want to choose, the Happymodel ES24TX Pro series. That's the one that we built in the configurator, and we'll go ahead and choose that. Alright, as you can see here, we have chosen the correct file. This is the bin that was created when we told it to build. So that's the build file, the bin. And we're going to go ahead and click on update. Again, you want to, before you click on that, you want to make sure that your battery and everything is good to go. You want to make sure that your screen on your radio is correct. Alright, and then here we're going to go ahead and click on update, so everything is looking good. So now, once this is finished, we should have a correctly updated external module, the 3.2. Alright, so everything was looking good. Hit OK, and we're done. We're going to go ahead and disconnect our Wi-Fi. So I'll go down here and disconnect it, and we'll jump over to the bench. Alright, so we're disconnected from the Wi-Fi at the computer, and this went back to where it's kind of the main screen there. Alright, so we're all done here, and we can go ahead and just kind of look through here. Alright, and before we exit, here I'm flying a whoop, and I'm racing. I'm not flying a Cinewhoop. I'm not really kind of just floating around. I'm trying to go really fast. I'm not very fast, but I'm trying to. But I want to go ahead and run a higher packet rate. So I'm going to go up to the 500 hertz. So that's 500 packets per second of communication between the external module and the receiver of the quadcopter. So there's some Betaflight settings that we're going to do. I just want it to be a really fast rate, so I'm not going to really worry about any range. Pretty much flying my whoop right in front of myself. If you're going to push your limits and run further out, you might want to drop that packet rate down so you don't have so many errors or misreads because you're too far away from your receiver. For me, that's not the issue, but this is going to come into play further along in Betaflight. So let's go ahead and return out of here. We're done. That module is ready to go. The only thing we're going to have to do is bind up to our quadcopter. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and shut this radio off. And we're going to grab our quadcopter and we're going to plug it into the computer, and we're going to jump on to Betaflight. Now here's the thing. When you plug in your quadcopter, you're going to need a fan. If you don't have a fan, you can blow on it. If you don't want to do that, then you're going to have to do small increments, because the VTX, if you have a built-in VTX or you have an external VTX, it's going to power up when you plug it into the computer. You don't want to burn your VTX up before you get a chance to even fly the thing. So you want to make sure that you keep that cool. I can't stress that enough. So I actually have a little fan. So I've got my trusty little fan here. So I'll have that turned on. I'm going to go ahead and plug this into Betaflight. So I have my trusty little cord here. Now there's a few things that we want to do right quick when we plug in the Betaflight to kind of check on it. We don't want to just go straight into firmware updating. Good grief. Let me zoom out for you real quick here. I don't know who wound this up last time, but it's probably me. So there's a few things that we want to do right away with our quadcopter before we do anything else. So let's go ahead and plug this dude in the Betaflight. Alright, so we're over here at the computer and we're plugged in. I just want to let you know, when you download Betaflight configurator, you should be on 10.9. If your configurator is on 10.8 or older, you're going to need to update it to 10.9 to do 4.0. You're not going to be able to run 4.0 firmware on your quadcopter on a lower version. So make sure that your Betaflight configurator is on 10.9. So I have my fan turned on. Obviously, you can probably hear that in the background. We're going to go ahead and connect. Make sure we have a COM port. If you don't have a COM port, then that means your USB drive is not recognizing it. There's some fixers for that. Impulse RC usually does it. So go ahead and connect to your quadcopter. And on this quadcopter, stock is 3.1. I'm sorry, 4.3.1 Betaflight firmware, and then the target is right here, all that. So you want to make sure that you understand what that target is, because when you firmware update this to 4.4, this is the target we're going to be looking for. So the one thing we want to check before we go into firmware updating is, let's grab our quadcopter, make sure it's, you know, not overheating while we have it in our hand, but point it towards your computer, not the screen but your computer. If your laptop, then it's pointing towards your screen in that case, but hold it nice and level and point your camera directly level at this computer. Click here and that will align it. See how it's back, forward, right, left, and you can see how fast it's moving. So I'm doing that in my hand, right? If your quadcopter is moving like this, as you're jerking it around and your quadcopter is moving like this, there's not a good connection. Something's not right. You don't want to continue. Just go ahead and disconnect and reconnect. If that doesn't work and it's still moving really slow, go ahead and hold it as steady as you can. Put it on the table. Calibrate the accelerometer, because you really want this thing to have a good, I mean, that gyro's recognizing that super fast movement that I'm making with my hand, so that we know that we have a solid, good connection. Again, you can just reset it here, pitch back, pitch forward. If it's not moving at all, so you don't, these headings here, if you don't see any movement at all and you're moving around in your hand, that means your gyro is not working. Firmware flashing can sometimes help that, but there might be a bigger issue. They didn't solder it on the board correctly, maybe. But you wanna make sure that that is functioning, or return the thing and get your money back and buy something else. But that's pretty much where we're at. We really don't need to do anything in here, because we're going to go ahead and flash this to 4.4. So in CLI, we're going to type in BL for bootloader, and we're going to hit enter. Now once that happened, do you see right here, it went to DFU mode? So it's no longer a COM port. We're actually in bootloader mode, DFU. That's what you need to go into here. If this isn't DFU, you can't go in here and do anything. If you typed in CLI BL and hit enter and you didn't get this, then you will have to find the boot button. Let's put our quadcopter back in the fan. You can't find anything DFU. You're going to have to look on your flight controller and find the actual boot button or the boot pins and short it out with metal tweezers or something of that nature. You're going to have to get your board into bootloader. So once you're done there, you can come into the firmware flasher, and we're going to go ahead and continue on right here. So that's the board that we have. Okay, if we go to show release candidates in expert mode, and then we can go in here and we can do release candidates, and it will show us all kinds of different things. I don't really want to go into that because we want something that's a full release. 4.4 is a full release. We shouldn't have a bunch of different complications, things of that nature. So you can flash a different core assembly. So that's kind of interesting. I might get a little bit more into that, but for now we're just going to load this hex file. Okay, we've chose the information here, so go ahead and load that up. So we have our Crazy Bee FX 1200, and this is the prefix 4.4, everything's in here, status success. So everything's loaded up, and now we can go into flash firmware. Before we do that, we want to make sure that our battery on our laptop or our connection to our computer is good. So we'll go ahead and flash the firmware. So we'll take this to 4.4. This might take a second. I'll kind of sit through it. I want to make sure that the time it takes me, the time it takes you is similar depending on your processor, your computer. It shouldn't take an awful long time. You kind of don't want to mess with your quadcopter or be dangling it or swirling it around, because if it loses connection or something happens at this point in time, it could brick your flight controller, and that's a whole nother process to try to get that undone. So go ahead and everything's successful. So you can see everything has changed. The COM port is popped up, so it's ready to connect to Betaflight. Now, apply custom defaults. You want to do this because the pinout of the board and the communication, the SPI, all that stuff is in your custom defaults. So make sure you say yes to custom defaults. And then at this point we can click auto connect. So everything we're going to do, we're just going to kind of go through. You're going to get a warning here. This is normal. You need to make some changes. You need to fix some things, go through some other stuff. We'll do that here. Right now we just want to make sure that our quadcopter is moving around. So I can have my quadcopter and I'm holding it level. I'll reset the Z. Okay, I'm moving it fast, forward, backward, nothing's happening. That's because we need to calibrate the accelerometer. So I'm moving side, 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 and look, it's not even responding. So I'm going to hold my quadcopter as level as I can. If you want to, you can put it on a flat surface, and you can accelerate her. So now it's moving around correctly. Okay, so we have a good solid connection. Everything's working the way it should. This is kind of an interesting thing you can take note. Arming disable flags. You cannot arm your quadcopter if there's anything in this line. So we have RX failure because we have no connection to a radio. MSP means that we're connected to the computer. And then motor protocol, we haven't set up a motor protocol. We're going to do that next. And watch what happens when I tilt my quadcopter. Look, angle. We need to change that as well. Because if you're going to want to use flip over when crash, you need to make sure you do that. So we can move on. Everything's looking pretty normal at this point in time. Ports tab. This is a built-in SPI receiver. Okay. So we're not going to, it's not a serial receiver. If you have a Beta FPV flight controller, it may have a built-in serial RX, so you'll enable that. But a SPI ELRS receiver in this Superbee, we don't want to enable that. But what we do want to enable is smart audio. For the Happymodel OVX VTX, we want to enable the smart audio. This says tramp, this says smart audio, so we'll enable that and we'll save and reboot. Because we have it on auto connect, it's going to save and reboot. Look, we took care of the accelerometer, so our list is getting smaller. I have enabled expert mode. I'm going to the configurator now, and I'm going to come back to ports. It's still there, just making sure. Configurator. This flight controller has a an F411 processor on it. The PID loop is pretty high. This is really not going to be successful at 400 in my opinion. I've been reading along some things that 1.6 is more appropriate. I'm going to leave it at 4 to kind of see where we're at. And then if you have any issues, sorry, I don't want to go back and forth too much, but if you are pitching forward, like right now I'm pitching forward and you see how it's tilting to the right, and then I pitch to the right and it pitches back. I pitch back and it's leaning left, and I roll to the left and it pitches forward. That means that the gyro alignment, the board alignment is not correct. See, right now it should pitch forward, not to the right. It shouldn't roll right when I pitch forward, okay? So in the configurator, we need to correct that. I'm just going to go to default and I'm going to save and reboot. Yes, I know I haven't set that up yet. I'm going to go back to ports tab. I'm sorry. I'm going to go to setup tab, and I'm going to realign that. Now pitch forward, pitch back, pitch roll right, roll left. So now it's correct. Okay, so in the configurator, you're able to change your gyro information and different aspects. You can change each individual one. In our case, it's just the gyro, because I actually turned this board so that my USB connector came out the side, so that way I can connect to the computer with a battery plugged in. Craft name, of course, Propsoff, because that's awesome. Pilot name, that's new for this configurator. Not sure what can be shown in OSD and can be set to pilot name, so I'll look into that a little bit later. Now, I have a Whoop with 702 motors. That's not, you're not going to hear any of these beeps. I don't have a beeper on it, and the motors are not going to, there's no use in having any of this stuff turned on, because you're not going to hear anything anyway. The other thing is, this is a Whoop, and I fly in angle mode. If you're going to fly in acro mode, you might want to leave air mode on. I'm not going to have air mode on, because I don't want this thing going berserk when I bang into things. I want it to kind of, do its thing. I'm going to set the idle of the motors up higher so that it doesn't just kind of bobble and fall out of the air. Everything else looks pretty good in here. And then you remember when I said that the angle, the arming flag earlier? Let me go back there. Yeah. In the setups, see how it's angled? So if I hold it nice and level, that goes away. And then as soon as I get past 25 degrees, it won't arm. And that's in case you're carrying your quadcopter in your hand and you don't want it to arm accidentally. That's just another safety feature. But with small drones, and I'm not worried about safety, I'm going to change that in configuration. And right here, I'm going to change it to 180. So now I can save that. And we'll go back and I'll show you. Yeah. So now there's no more angle. Any direction, upside down, I can turtle mode, I can arm it upside down. It doesn't matter which direction I go. That's not a problem anymore. Alright, so the next thing is we're going to do a preset. We're going to go up here to RC link. Alright, and we're going to go to 500. Remember earlier when we were on the bench with the radio, we wanted to choose 500 packet rate. Here's 250, and here's 50, 150. So that's depending on range and things of that nature. There's a lot to read. The Expresslrs website is something else. I mean, it will take you weeks to read it all. But this is the one we want to choose for the example that I'm showing in this video. And the cool thing is they finally have the 4.4 target in here, so we can go ahead and get that set up. So we have Expresslrs 500 packet rate, and we are going to set it up for race. If you want to, you can set it up for something else. This will change the filters. Okay, so the smoothing, RC smoothing, if you will, depending on what you're doing. Racing, I want this thing to be basically doing exactly what I say when I say. If your hands are like, I don't know, if you're like really nervous and stuff, you might want to slow that down a little bit. Elrs RX connection method, we have an SPI. Okay, Betaflight came out with a Whoop board that has a serial type RX, but we're using an SPI receiver on the Superbee ELRS flight controller. Single pack value is good because it's a 1S, and everything else looks good to me. So we're going to go ahead and pick that, and then we're going to save it, and that will apply our configuration. Alright, next up, let's go ahead and go into video transmitter. So right now our device is ready. That means our smart audio, when we were up here in the ports tab, we enabled this. If this isn't enabled, this isn't going to work. Okay? Nothing is set up so far because we don't have the correct table put in here. We need the table from Happymodel's website. Alright, so we're over here on the website for Happymodel, and we have Smart Audio here, and this is Tramp. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and grab this Smart Audio file. So we're going to grab it from Save. Oh, I missed an E. We want to make sure that we get all of it. So we have the E, and we're going to bring it all the way up to the enable symbol here, to the pound symbol. That will initiate our Betaflight. We're going to go ahead and copy it, and then we'll go back to Betaflight, and then in Betaflight we'll go ahead and go to CLI, and we'll click here and we'll paste. Alright, you see that save right there? All the information is above it. You can't see it, but as soon as you hit enter, it will enter all of that information in here for you. And because we have the save prompt, when we copied it, we went all the way to save. If you don't want it to automatically boot us out of here and back into our other configurations, don't use that save. But in this case, it's there. So as soon as I hit enter, it's going to push the information in here, and it will bump us out of CLI. Okay? So that's done. And yes, I know. And now in the VTX table, you could see that things have changed. So we have, this is all the OVX 300 information. If you have a built-in VTX, or you have a different external VTX, you want to make sure that you have the correct table. If it's Smart Audio 2.0, or if it's Smart Audio, whatever the case may be, the VTX type here would be undefined for me because we used custom settings from Happymodel's website. If you want to, you can go to this page here. This page will give you a GitHub information, and you can choose your correct VTX table. That's kind of some research you're going to have to do. This video is already going to be super long and power packed with all kinds of information. But in this case, you want to study on that. So what we can do is we can set up our race band channel. I know channel 8 is kind of a lower channel, and then I want to do 0 output. Okay, right now I don't want my VTX blasting away, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. And you can see the device is ready, yes. And then band and channel, now that it's finished saving, it's race band 8, so I know that's my frequency, and the output power is 0. Now you can see here low power disarm, that's off. I personally don't like that. Low power disarm, that means when you disarm it, it reduces the power way down, so if you're racing, you don't have your VTX running if you crash out or something. The only problem is if I disarm so that I can change, I do an accelerometer calibration on the fly sometimes. Sometimes you hit so hard your accelerometer goes goofy. So I can literally land my quad, do an accelerometer calibration, and take back off if it's that bad. So I don't want my VTX going out because then I can't see what I'm doing. So I'm going to leave that off. But everything else is kind of set up right now. We're outputting nothing. So we have that saved. So now we know that our VTX isn't sitting there on the table, you know, pumping out 400 or 100 or whatever milliwatts burning up. That's kind of why this is the next step. So we have our presets that we went through. PID tuning, if we look in here, our presets change things like this. So like our jitter reduction and our smoothness. If you're running Elrs 500 packet rate, this is the setting you want to go with. If you're cinematic, it would change it. It would make these numbers different. This would be higher, this would be lower, things of that nature. We're going to leave everything on defaults. I'm not going to get into PID tuning in this video. In your case, you want to just kind of leave it as is for now. We need to go to our motors tab, and we need to enable some things. I have my props running in a different direction. This is props in. I have them running out. So this one would be counterclockwise. This one would be clockwise and counterclockwise. This is the way I want it. So I'm going to go ahead. This is the direction my props are put on my quadcopter, and we're going to save that. you have to save that before you can continue. And now we're going to go ahead and choose DShot 300. A Whoop can't run 600. The Superbee, I should say, the Superbee flight controller cannot handle 600. So we're going to choose 300. I don't want motor stop. When I pull my throttle down, I want my motors to continue to spin, and I actually want them to spin up a little bit higher. Just from my own, I'm going to start at 8. If the quadcopter bobbles out of the air when I pull my throttle down, I'll increase this a little bit. I want enough airflow coming out of the quadcopter at the lowest possible throttle. ESC sensor, not worried about, and bidirectional D-shot is disabled. The firmware on this quadcopter has BOHELI-S firmware. To get BOHELI-S with bidirectional D-shot RPM filtering, you need to pay for it. JESC, you have to pay for a license. And that will give you BOHELI-S RPM filtering, JES ESCs. I use BlueJ ESC configurator. It's free. It's an open source firmware. But for now, for this video, we're going to leave the D-shot protocol where it is. We're just going to run this stock. We want to know, is this quadcopter going to work out? If not, we're going to send it back, or we're going to figure out how to get it fixed, right? So for now, we'll just leave that, and we'll save that. You see, we don't have any more warnings popping up because we've resolved everything. So the next thing to do to fly our quadcopter is to go to our receivers tab. Okay, maybe we want to touch on the battery a little bit. They do a pretty good job nowadays of setting this correctly. You do want to land your craft at 3.5. You don't really want to run your LiPo below 3.5 while it's in the air. That way, if you land at 3.5, it will rest at 3.6. If you have kind of a saggy battery, it'll rest at 3.7. And that kind of keeps your LiPo healthy. Minimum cell voltage 3.3, because if you're going to do like little punch outs and stuff, you might not quite be at 3.5, but it allows it to kind of bounce around a little bit. 3.3 is not going to work. I use high volt LiPos, and my high volt LiPos, I'll actually have them at 4.35. So I'm actually going to go 4.5 because I don't really care what the maximum is. That will keep the warning, the land now warning, from flashing in your screen the whole time you're trying to fly. So annoying. So you might want to check on that and make sure that's correct. And we'll go ahead and save that. And we'll save it again. And then we'll go ahead and go to our receivers tab. And we have a built-in SPI receiver. We have Expresslrs. This is new to me. We don't have to choose crossfire now. So it's Expresslrs. Oh, the binding phrase. How cool is that? You can put in your binding phrase and it automatically binds up when you plug in your quadcopter and your radio. So that's super cool. I'm going to try to bind it the old-fashioned way. Yeah, that's pretty wild. So it even gives you the code. Oh, man, that's so awesome. Thanks, Betaflight. You guys are amazing. The whole crew. Wow, that is something else. Sorry while I geek out on that for a second. This you don't have to go on the website and get this code and put it in CLI and all that anymore. It's right there. How cool. They got a bind receiver the old-fashioned way right there. So I do want telemetry on because Elrs has telemetry data, so we can get information back to our radio, so we can have our radio scream at us all day long with all these different values if we want. And we're going to go ahead and turn our radio on at this point. Let's jump over to the bench. All right, so I have the quadcopter unplugged from the computer, so there's no power going to it. Turned off the fan because I'm sure that's annoying you. It is what it is. We're going to go ahead and power up our radio.
Welcome to HTX.
All right. Just slide this out of the way here. Let me zoom into the screen for you a little bit. All right, so we're zoomed in a little bit there for you. So now we can go to our model, and we're going to go ahead and page over. Go up here and just check to make sure our external module is powered up. and we're going to page over. Heli setup, we're not going to do anything with heli setup. We're not going to do anything in flight modes. Inputs. These 4 inputs are already set up, and if you see here it says throttle, aileron, elevator, and rudder. That is our TAER. We're going to come into play later in the receivers tab of Betaflight. We need to understand that our channel mapping for our sticks, because right now you can fly the quadcopter. We already had the radios built in. The first 4 channels of your 16 channel receiver is already done for us. So we have throttle, which is here, and then we have aileron, which is here, and then we have elevator, and then we have rudder. So throttle, yaw, pitch, and roll. TAER. Okay, now we need to add channels to that. Elrs on their website, if you read all of it, they say that their AUX channel 1, which is kind of interesting. AUX channel 1 is actually our 5th channel of our radio. So the auxiliary channel in the receivers tab of Betaflight, AUX 1 is channel 5. We need to set up arming on that one. They recommend it. It's a safety thing, functions and all that stuff. All right, so in our inputs, we're going to name this, and we're going to make it super easy. We're just going to go over here, and we're going to choose it, and we're going to just say AUX 1. So we're going to just name it A1. Okay, so A1, hit return, name. Now this is where you name it for yourself, so when you're looking at your radio screen, you can tell what it is. So in my case, it's going to be ARM, and it should be for you too. All right, return, go to source. Now here's what you need to do. You need to choose what button do you want to use. What is it that you want to use for arming? I use this one right here. Some people use this one here. Whatever the case may be, you want to use the switch for arming. So when I pull this switch all the way in the up position, because right now you want it down. That's another note in Expresslrs that you want to have it in the 2000 range. So watch 0, see a negative, and then positive. See if you can see that. Negative, positive. So they're wanting it to be in the positive in Betaflight. So you don't want to have it armed in the down position. You want to have it armed in the up position. So the down is kind of a default. Nothing's happening. It's off. And then up is on. I mean, basically is how to explain it. So that's the SB switch that I've chosen. So I'll go ahead and return. And at this point, we can go ahead and return out and go to our next thing. I'm flying a whoop. So I sometimes want to have angle, horizon, and acro. So my next input is going to be AUX 2. So I'm going to name that A, you guessed it, 2. Hit return and then name it. So this would be modes. So I'm just going to go real quick here and put in, go all the way to the end for lowercase. If you go real fast on the wheel, it'll slide by a lot faster. Mode, and then return, and then I'm going to go pick my mode switch. So what switch are you going to use for modes? I'm going to use a 3 position. So in the down position, default, when I have my quadcopter plugged in for the first time, you see it changed that one. Look at change this one now. So you can go back and forth. See, make sure I got my screen lined up so you can see what I'm doing here. So that's SB and that's SC. So down is angle, 1 in the middle is horizon, and then all the way up is acro. That's what I want to set up in Betaflight. So that's what I want my switch to do, and that's it. So we'll go ahead and return out of here. Now we're going to go to our next channel. The only thing I have left to do for a whoop basically is to, it's going to be AUX 3, return, name it, and we're going to do turtle. All right, and source, click on that. What do we want to have set up for turtle? Because turtle mode, we're going to arm it and we're going to put it in turtle mode, and then we're going to disarm, and so it's flip over when crash. It was called turtle mode at one point in time. I don't know. It's called flip over and crash. So the SF switch. So I'm going to return out of that. So I've chosen SF as my switch, which is this one right here. So now when I want to go into turtle mode, okay, I'm arming, I'm flying, I crash, I'm upside down, disarm, initiate, crash over, flip over when crash, or whatever, turtle mode, and then rearm the quadcopter. This stick doesn't do anything anymore. It's only this one. These two motors will spin, 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 but they spin in reverse. So they'll flip the quadcopter back over. The one thing you want to keep in mind with turtle mode is you don't want to really bang this too much. You know, that's really aggressive. I mean, it's basically wide open, sending a ton of amperage to your motors. If you have Barbie doll hair stuck in your motor, or you have leaves or grass, and you go whacking around on that, you're gonna instantly smoke that little motor. So be very careful using that mode. And then you'll disarm, you'll disable your flip over when crash, rearm your quadcopter, and take off. So that's kind of how that works. All right, so now here's kind of the interesting thing. We have the channels set up. Okay, I should have just turned off my module. It's not too warm because we have it on the lowest setting, but still. We have all of our channels set up. So we have channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're using 7 channels right now. We're using 3 aux channels and then our 4 primary channels. That's great. Our radio is ready to go. It's gonna send those send that information to the processor of the radio, to our module. But Betaflight needs a little something more. So we're gonna page to mixes. Okay, this is where Betaflight's going to see those movements. If you don't have your mixes set up, you might see stick movements because they're already set up for you, TAER. But, and your radio might be like ARE, you know, you might have a different channel mapping depending on your radio. But I defaulted my radio to TAER because radios way back in the day were TAER. Okay, spectrum and stuff like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a mixer for all these channels. Now you can see source A1. It already chose this source from over here, right? So you can kind of think of it as pages laid across your table. So it's already kind of spreadsheeted across. A1 is already listed. So the mixer name, I'm just going to name it A1. Because it makes it simple. I mean, there's no sense in that. I mean, if you want to go to town, you can name all kinds of stuff. The source is important though, because it's getting that input from A1. That's what we want. We want a mixer for A1. If you go and change that to A2, then your mixer is going to be diagonal. And that's it. Just hit return, and it's automatically set up. It's really late at night. My brain is starting to slow down on me. I'll try not to fade out on you too much. So this is obviously going to be A2. All right, and it's getting the information from the previous page, so everything looks good. Return, and then you guessed it, we're going to go A3. Did I initiate another one below there? Oh, I did. I was messing around there. Let's go ahead and delete that one. All right, so we have A1, A2. Let's go ahead and edit that one. Over here messing around. Return. Edit this one. And, oops. Wow, you can put a long name in there, can't you? A3. Okay. So now we have all our mixers are ready to go. So now we're going to communicate with Betaflight correctly. Mixes and then outputs. In this screen, I really don't want to do this in this tutorial because this kind of takes some time. But you're going to have in Betaflight, you'll see 988. And then when you go all the way up in the top, it'll be 212. That's incorrect for a quadcopter. You don't want that. You want it to be 1000 and 2000. So just real quick, we can go into channel 1 and edit it. Yeah. Minimum. So we want to pull this all the way down and slide this, because remember we were on throttle. So this is channel 1, which is throttle, T-A-E-R. Channel 1. We have our throttle all the way in the down position because we calibrated our sticks. So we know that we're in the far lower position. We want that number to be 1000. So in Betaflight, we can get 1000 out of that. So come up to 1000, come back, 999, 1000, 999, 1000. That's good. If this is bouncing around, then your gimbals have a little deadband needed in them. I'm not going to get into that in this video, but terminology, if this is like bobbling up and down in Betaflight, you can add some deadband to get rid of that. So return, we're going to go here to the maximums. So turn your throttle all the way up, and we're going to draw this down to 2000. That's a proper setup for a quadcopter. You don't want it to be 212. You want it to be 2000. So all the way down 1000, all the way up 2000. Hit return, return, return. So now you can see we already did channel 1, which is our throttle, and then you're going to do the next 3. Do not go any further. Don't change the weights of the modes for the aux channels. You want the aux channels left the way they are. All right, we're going to go page over. Curves, we're not going to mess with that. Logic switches. I used to do so much stuff in logic switches on my QX7. I had that radio just saying, oh, I used to fly a lot of line of sight. I hardly do anymore because what little time I have to do anything is FPV. But logic switches are great because you can set up all these different things. Betaflight has come a long way, and it's like really awesome because they're giving you options in Betaflight so you don't have to create logic switches. Really cool stuff to play with in logic switches. Special functions. Again, you can set that up to where you can have, like, you know, your special function switch can do this, and then when you do that, it'll play the sound, it'll play the track. Another cool area to get into. Telemetry. This is where you would want to have a LiPo plugged into your quadcopter, and you'd come down here to discover new sensors. Now, I will say one thing with Elrs, we want to take this to 50, and we want to take this to 20. Okay, and then we'll go to discover new sensors. We need a LiPo plugged in to our quadcopter so that we can do that, but we haven't bound it yet. Okay, we're still setting up our radio. So once we bind the two, then we can do that. So go ahead and page over. Display. These are widgets for your telemetry, so you can kind of play around with that. So when you go out to your main screen, instead of just having something like this, you can have different information displayed on your screen, and that's your telemetry page. Right now we don't have any because we haven't bound them up yet. So that's pretty much it. This radio is ready to go. You can hear that fan. That fan's kicked up a little bit. I don't know if it might have an internal resistor that measures, it might have a little temperature in it, and then it allows more voltage to the fan to turn it up as it heats up. Not sure, but that'd be kind of cool. So I'm going to go ahead and set my radio at an angle here so the fan can get some flow to it. That's really annoying. I mean, like, why do they do that? Why would they do that? You set the radio down and it suffocates the fan. Whatever. Anyway, so that's up at an angle. So let's go ahead and jump back over to Betaflight, and we're going to get our quadcopter in bind mode, and we're going to bind it up. All right, we're in Betaflight here, automatically connected for us. And we're in the receivers tab, and we're going to go to this here. This is really cool. This is something you can read about. some people, you know, don't use a binding phrase, so I'm just going to go ahead and use the old-fashioned way. So let's jump over to the bench here, and we're going to grab our radio, and we're going to go to Model, and we're going to page over one time, and we're going to scroll back. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to System. We're going to page over here to... Now, mind you, you're going to have your Expresslrs. In my case, it's a little unique because the Elrs script in here is not the same as what I downloaded because I have more than one on this radio. I'm testing out. I'm not really committed. I have a lot of quadcopters already on 251. The only issue is 251 Elrs won't communicate with 4.4 Betaflight. It's like... Some of the things you got to learn in this hobby is just mind-numbing. But I don't want to corrupt my Elrs 2.5 because I have so many quads on it. And I don't want to update my Betaflight. You get my drift. So you'll probably just choose it there and you'll be fine. But I want to go over here and pick the file that I put in it. So I'm going to go to Scripts. And I'm going to go to Tools. And I'm going to choose that. I'm going to initiate it. And now I'm going to bind to the quadcopter. So I'm going to slide down here to bind. I'm going to go ahead and click on bind. And then I'm going to click on bind here. So you can see the quadcopter spinning around over there. So we're done with our radio here. So I'm going to hold down on the return. Hold down on the return. We're back out of there. Tilt that over. Now in Betaflight, it's spinning around like crazy because our channel map is incorrect. You see right here our channel map? It's not AETR. For me, it's TAER 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? And then as soon as I save that, reboot it, we'll come back to the receiver. And now it's sitting still. Okay? Alright, as you can see, I'm flying the quadcopter now. And, you know, you can kind of fly this little model in here if you want. So pitch back, roll to the left, pitch forward, nice and smooth. Here's the little bit of deadband. And now if you look at throttle, pull the throttle all the way down, 1000 all the way up. So 999. We can increase our output, so we can go back to our outputs in our radio and get that to bump up to 2000, and you can do that right now. Hey, me from the future, I had to jump in here and just say to come in and turn telemetry on here. So you just want to make sure that's turned on. Go ahead and save and reboot, and we'll continue on with the process. Switches. So you have switch auxiliary 1 is your arming, and then you have your mode switches 1, 2, 3. For angle, horizon, and acro, and then turtle. So aux 3 is turtle mode, flip over and crash. So everything is working in here. We have everything set up correctly. The binding phrase is really cool. I might add that later. Not really worried about it at the moment. It comes in pretty handy though, I guess. Modes. So we're going to go ahead. Did I save it? Yes. Modes. We're going to go ahead and disable the hiding. We're going to add a range for arm. We're going to add a range for angle. We're going to add a range for horizon. And then we're going to go to flip over and crash. We're going to add a range. And we're going to hide everything. So these are the channels that we want. See how it says auto on all of them? As soon as you flip a switch, all of them went aux 1. Okay? So I'm going to arm the quadcopter. I'm not worried about anything else. The only thing I'm worried about is auxiliary 1, which is arming. I'm going to slide this over because you can see this little peg went over here. I'm going to tighten this up and I'm going to save it. So angle. So if you want to, go ahead and disarm your quad. So that's disarm because there's no bar here. Angle. We know that that's aux 2 because that's the way we set it up. And our horizon's on the same switch. Okay? So now we're in angle, we're in horizon, we're in acro. If there's nothing there, then that would make acro. So if you don't have angle or horizon, your quadcopter's in acro all the time, forever. So we're just going to tighten this up a little bit. So now angle, let me save that. It should come up yellow. Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know why the arming's not doing that anymore. It used to. Angle, horizon, you can see it change colors, and then acro. Both of them go gray, that means you're in acro. Flip over when crash, we need to change this to aux 3. If you want to, you can put on auto and just flip that switch and it does it for you. So I have the switch in the up position, meaning I want to enable flip over when crash or turtle mode or whatever you want to call it. So now we've enabled that, and then I can shut it off. Now if I want to, I can arm my quadcopter, put it in flip over when crash, and then it'll function. Alright, so all switches in the down position, the only thing that is on is angle, because that's the default position of that switch. So we'll save that, make sure. Everything else is kind of set up. OSD is kind of your last thing that you want to add some things in here. I know that my camera is an NTSC camera. You can look at your manufacturer. I would advise it to go in here and make sure that that's correct. I also want to just load font manager, upload. I do this because a lot of times there's bugs in the OSD, so I can kind of get away from worrying about it if I go in and load that right quick before I get too far along. But anyway, NTSC, and then for me, when I'm racing, I think it's pretty important to have my fly mode, so I know that I'm not in angle or acro or horizon, you know, not sure where I'm at. Let me get that back over. I kind of know from memory where they've changed this too. This is, I actually don't think I like it as much as I did before. They've added some things in here too, Lord have mercy. VTX voltage, don't care. Channel, I do want to know my VTX channel. Is that right? VTX delay distance status voltage. Yeah, I just want to know my channel, what I'm on, because if you're flying with other people, it's really nice for them to be able to see your OSD and know what you're on. So you have your different stuff in here, and honestly, all I want to know is the channel, the power. Let's see here. Timer 2. I prefer to have this timer 1 is on, so if you plug your quadcopter in, it'll start recording a clock. I don't care for that. I don't really care how long it's been plugged in. What I want to know is how long is my flight time. So that's why I chose that one. And then I want to know one other thing, my battery voltage. And that is average cell voltage. So that'll give me my 3 point whatever voltage. And the last thing I want to do is another thing for racing is your pilot name. This really helps the announcer out. I know a lot of you know that I try to do my best to announce at races to kind of fire the guys up, you know, get everybody. I want link quality too. Pilot, I thought it was pilot name, there we go. Alright, so this is the link quality. I like to know that when I DVR. I like to know if someone's blowing me out really bad, because I'll get like really bad link quality because there'll be packets missing, and that'll let me know if I'm sitting next to somebody at a race running like 500 milliwatts or a whole watt. You know, they're throwing out a watt out of their radio. That kind of sucks when you're racing because they blow you out of the water and then you have a bad experience. So that's kind of how I set mine up. So I have my VTX, what mode I'm in, my battery voltage, my alarm. I'm usually looking at the screen right here. I really don't care too much about the rest of this. I'm primarily looking at this area right here while I'm flying. So having this up a little bit gives me a chance to see it. Pilot name is for the announcer, and or somebody that's, you know, you accidentally leave your quad on, they can go, hey, Propsoff, shut that off. So it's kind of good to have some of this information. And I'm going to save it. That's it. This quadcopter should be flying. And if Happymodel did a decent job, or the tune that they've put on this board for this hex file, we should be good. So let's jump back to the bench. Alright, so our quadcopter is plugged into the computer. We've disconnected it from Betaflight. I'm going to unplug it. Should get a response from our radio. And I'm going to grab a LiPo real quick. I guess we can shut that fan off for right now. Our radio's on, so I want to make sure I'm tilting that up. Let some air flow underneath it, right? Let's grab a LiPo. Now, pardon me, because I haven't charged up a LiPo for this, so let me see if I can find one that's a little bit higher. This one's a little higher. I'm kind of excited. I don't know if you can see my hand trembling a little bit. Alright, so let's go ahead and plug in our quadcopter. We already did a continuity check. This is the first time we've plugged a LiPo in, I'm telling you right now. I mean, we're already here. We already spent enough time together. Okay, continuity. I have a video on my channel. I like this meter. It's like $20 on Amazon. I think I got it for $15 actually. You can't beat it. It's really a good meter, and I've got a lot of meter. I don't really want to use like a super expensive meter for the channel, you know, for tutorials and stuff, because a lot of people can't afford several $100 meter when they're trying to fly a quadcopter, for crying out loud. This stuff's expensive enough. So grab your battery lead. I'm sorry, grab your pigtail, not your battery lead, but your pigtail to your quadcopter, and it doesn't matter which way your leads are. Okay, you don't want to hear that though. So make sure you come in here. If you can't get in there to check it, you can go up to your battery leads on your flight controller. Like I said, I have a video. If you go here, now if you do have a fluke meter, like a couple $100 fluke meter, you might get a little registration because that meter is super sensitive. This meter is awesome. I mean, it does capacitors, it does resistors, DC, AC, it does amp draw. I can put this over here, do an amp draw on this if I have a harness. I actually have a video on how to do that in my quick tips. But yeah, I'll just come in here and touch on my 2 battery leads. I'm not getting anything. If I got that, don't plug in a LiPo. If you touch your battery leads, your pigtail leads on your flight controller, and you get it to continuity, that's a dead short. When it goes to zeros and it's beeping, that means when you plug that LiPo in, it's smoked. If you do have continuity, you need to give it a real good look and see if there's something touching. You've soldered a bridge, or there's bad components. I've had Happymodel send me. I don't want to. I've sent more back, and I've got more here of flight controllers that are shorted out. So definitely something you want to look at. So I know that I don't have any continuity shorting or anything in this quad, so I can go ahead and plug in my LiPo.
Telemetry recovered.
Should have some telemetry, so we can go ahead and arm the quadcopter. I'm doing a whoop here, okay? But if you're doing something bigger than a whoop, this is not advisable. Please don't arm your quadcopter or plug a LiPo into your quad with your props on your quadcopter. Please remove your your props the entire time that you're doing bench work. When you're ready to set that thing on the flight line, that's when you have your props put on. Otherwise, it should be props off because you're on the bench. You get it? That's why the channel's called Propsoff, because I do the 99.9% stuff on the bench. But anyway, we're in a whoop. So let's go ahead and arm it. You see that flipped around? I did that on purpose. I wanted to show you something. See how that's doing that? That's so annoying, right? You arm your quadcopter, everything seems normal, everything's good, right? Nope, it's not good. You don't want to do that too much. You burn your ESC up. Go ahead and unplug your quadcopter, because there's a step that you have to do. These BT 2.0 connectors are such a pain. Brand new connectors, man, they are absolutely a pain to get apart. And I know you're going to say in comments, you're going to say, oh, the GNB 27s are so much better because they have a flange on them, so you can actually pull the thing apart. As I said earlier, I've rotated my flight controller so that I could have my USB come out the side, so I can plug into my USB with my battery in. So that's kind of a cool thing that I did. I recommend it. but just keep in mind you have to change something in there. So let's jump back over to Betaflight because there's something else we need to do. Okay?
Telemetry recovered.
Go ahead and put our fan back on our quad. I'm going to take my battery out just because for the tutorial I'll be in there longer than normal, so I can keep that cool. Alright, so we're back in Betaflight. We need to go to the Motors tab. Okay? Motors tab. And now, in the Motors tab, we need to make sure that everything's set correctly. But we need to reorder our motors. Okay? What's happening is the quadcopter thinks that motor 1 is motor 2, motor 3 is motor 4, motor 4 is motor 1. That's the problem. So we need to reorder them. So we understand that we do have our propellers off, because anytime you're messing around with Betaflight, you need to plug a LiPo in to get this process going. If you're plugging a LiPo into your quadcopter, you better have your props off. There's a lot of people that's got whacked up pretty good. Before we start this process, we need to go ahead and plug that LiPo back in. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and plug in the LiPo here. And I'm going to set my quadcopter flat on the table, camera pointed away from me. Okay, that's pretty important. Have your camera point. This is the front of the quad, this is the back of the quad, the right and the left side. Okay, let's see if I get this cable from yanking my quadcopter off the table. Alright, so now I'm going to come over to Betaflight and I'm going to go ahead and hit start. Now it's going to spin one of these motors. So you can see this motor. So come up here and click on that one. Now that one's spinning. Come over here and click on it. You want to kind of be quick at it. This one here is, I might have to turn my idle up a little bit. Right there. That one there. Okay. And then save. So what you've just done is you've reordered your motors. So now the quadcopter, the flight controller, knows that this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4. And it should match this diagram right here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the question is, are they spinning in the right direction? So my propeller on this quad is counterclockwise. This one's clockwise. This one's clockwise. This one's counterclockwise. And you can see the diagram here shows the rotation, the correct rotation. Come here, enable that. Go down to individual, because I like to do the individual. I don't want it doing it for me. Hold down on 1. And then you kind of barely touch it, and I can feel it spinning. Go down here and hold 2. Yep, it's spinning in the right direction. 3, it is spinning in the correct direction. 4, it's spinning in the correct direction. Now let's pretend that when I clicked on 1, this was spinning in this direction. That would be incorrect, because it needs to spin in counterclockwise. But let's say, for example, it's spun clockwise. You could see that we're on motor 4. We want to choose motor 1. See how that's still yellow? That means that the ESC passer, you don't have to go into the ESC firmware anymore. You could do it right here. I'm telling you, there's a donate page on Betaflight. You can go to Betaflight donation page and help propel the project by giving some funds to the software. You can only imagine how much this hobby would cost if we had to pay for proprietary software. It'd be DJI in that case. So you can click on reverse here, and that would do that one. If you choose this one, then it would do that one. You get what I'm saying? So then that one, you click on reverse it, and then you hold it down again to make sure. But I'm not going to do that because mine are correct. So I'm just going to close that. Nothing to save here. And then I'm going to go ahead and disconnect. And we can unplug the quadcopter. And then I like to reboot the flight controller. So I'm going to unplug it and then plug it back in.
Telemetry lost. RF signal low. Telemetry recovered.
All right. Put this in square in the screen for you here. Oh, our accelerometer is not right, so I'm going to make sure that's nice and flush down on the table. I'm going to calibrate the accelerometer. You can see that's the awesome part about this frame, because the battery is above the bottom of your motors. so you can actually get all 4 points flat on the table. So this thing is as level as can be. My motor, the prop line and the flight controller are in a perfect parallel position. Okay, the flight controller is not like angled and the motors are different angle. If you have something like that going on, you need to make sure your flight controller or your motor line is straight, which it is. So in the disarmed state, if your transmitter is disarmed, don't mess with your sticks, because that means something. I'm going to move this quadcopter over here because I don't, for this tutorial, I don't want it underneath my antenna because I could actually corrupt what I'm doing. With your radio, I told you this video is going to be long, but with your radio disarmed, don't mess with your sticks, because your sticks are actually Betaflight commands in the disarmed state. That quadcopter's plugged in, we're bound up, everything's communicating right now. That quadcopter and this radio are completely communicating even though it's disarmed. I'm going to go up in the left and I'm going to go down. I just calibrated the accelerometer. I'm going to put both of them in the center. I'm going to bring them down and out. I just saved the command. Okay, it's as if I went into Betaflight and clicked on accelerometer calibration. It's like I hit that button, and it's like I went in and clicked on the save in the bottom corner. I did that with the sticks. Okay, so we can bring our quad back over. We want to get this thing going because we don't want our VTX burning up, which we still have on 0 power, so don't forget you need to change that to higher power. Go ahead and arm the quad. Oh yeah. So we're flying. It actually doesn't sound too bad. It doesn't sound too bad. I'm not getting like a wonky thing. I can't wait. Let's get some goggles on and go rip this thing. I think that's for this video. We've got everything correct. The only thing left to do would be to tune out some of the bugs, to go into Betaflight and change our rates. That's about the only thing left to do. I think obviously you need to put your goggles on and make sure that your channel, remember what race band channel and everything. And when you go in, I have it unplugged, so I can mess with my sticks now, because if it's plugged in, you can't mess with your sticks. But if you pull your stick over to the center left and you bump up one time, you'll go into a menu. You go to features, VTX, and you can change that stuff in your OSD. So that's smart audio. So left, up, and then release. With it plugged in, with it disarmed, you can go into smart audio and change some stuff. But I think that's kind of as far as I needed to get with this video. I think it's gonna editing. I'm not sure. Probably have 6 to 7 hours of editing to do. So I'll try to kind of reduce some of it down. But I hope that something in this video kind of captured that moment of like, oh, that's what was wrong with mine, or hey, you know, I followed your whole process, had no problem, everything works great. Let me know in comments if there's something that's not right, because I don't have a problem with pulling the video down and changing and modifying or whatever. You know, my brain is only going 100 miles an hour until 3 in the morning. So let me know in comments. I appreciate it either way. And then, you know, if this helped you out, you know, give me a thumbs up and subscribe. If you hated it, man, you give me a thumbs down. It all works. Enjoy the breeze.